Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Nathan Cudgel here, and I just finished watching Season 1 of... If you've not seen the show, that's really gonna make no sense to you why I did that. Speaking of seeing the show, this is a spoiler-free review. There will be absolutely no spoilers talked about in this video, which is gonna be very hard because there's a lot of spoilers in this show. Now, if you've already seen the show, or if you just don't care about spoilers, I will be uploading a spoiler review tomorrow or sometime this week. That being said, this video is going to be completely spoiler-free. Now, Invincible is a show which was originally a comic written by Robert Kirkman, the same guy who made The Walking Dead, and on the surface, I'm going to be honest, it looks pretty generic. It's about this guy named Mark Grayson. His dad's basically Superman. His name's Omni-man. He's basically knockoff Superman. Pretty much all the superheroes in the show are just knockoffs of other actual characters. Like, there's a knockoff Batman, a knockoff Wonder Woman. They're all knockoffs to some degree. Even the main character's kind of just a cross between Spider-Man and like a young Superman. They're all knockoffs. That being said, it gets interesting in the different scenarios they throw the knockoffs in. So if you're watching the first episode and you're wondering, why is this show interesting in the least? I have seen this story a million times by this point. Watch till the end of the first episode. I was in that same boat. I was midway through the episode wondering, why am I watching this? This isn't that interesting. Watch till the end. If you're not hooked by the end of the first episode, you probably won't get hooked. That being said, I always appreciate it when people are like, yo, watch till midway through the first season. If you're not hooked by then, you won't get hooked at all, and stuff like that. In this show, if you're not hooked by the end of the first episode, if you've not seen what makes this show different by that time, then you probably won't get hooked. And the episodes are only like 40 minutes, and there's only, I think, 8 of them. So just do yourself a favor and at least watch the first one. It's pretty short. Also, little side note, I am wearing my little Invincible get-up here. This wasn't entirely planned at the start. I was just putting on my jacket for the video. I wear a different color every video. It's kind of the uniform at this point. I realized the blue kind of looks like the blue in the show, so I put on a yellow shirt, and now I'm invincible. Now, like I mentioned earlier, all the characters are pretty much knockoffs of some degree. That being said, I appreciate what the show does, and that at first when you're introduced to most of the characters, it's like, okay, obviously the main character is basically Spider-Man. Omni-man's basically Superman. Adam Eve's kind of just Starfire. They're all just kind of varying degrees of knockoffs, but the more you see them, the more unique they get. The first couple times you see them, they are knockoffs. Then more and more you see their personality, and they are all very different. The only character who, by the end of the first season, I was still saying is a knockoff is basically the Hellboy guy. I don't even remember what his name actually was, but he is just Hellboy. He's like Hellboy plus John Constantine, basically. He was a knockoff all the way throughout. I don't know, he'll probably appear in Season 2, though, and be unique. And that is something to praise about this show, is the characters. They seem like knockoffs at first, but they really aren't, aside from 1 or 2. The side characters in this show really are great. That Adam Eve I mentioned, she really does barely anything in Season 1, but I still really liked her character. She has her own little side plot going that never really does too much in the first season, and I didn't care that much, and that's saying a lot. There's a guy named Robot. He has his own long subplot that's actually really cool. I love it when plots like that, side plots that are kind of boring, you don't see how this is going to in any way intertwine with the main story, then it does in a really cool way. That was like one of my favorite parts of the show, was in the finale when you kind of see the conclusion of Robot's subplot and you see kind of how everything intertwines together in multiple different ways. Most definitely my favorite character in the whole show is Cecil. Cecil has no superpowers. He's not technically the leader of any country. He has pretty much no authority over these superheroes other than the authority they give him. That being said, he's still the biggest badass on the show. I stand by that. He's basically Earth's de facto leader. I mean, there's still like the president of the US and Europe and everything in the show, though you never actually see him. You do see the White House at one point, though. Actually, in like the first scene. But Cecil is basically Earth's actual leader, and he is a badass. He has a awesome scene, and I think the second to last episode, that was probably my favorite scene in the whole season. I'll talk about that in the spoiler review. He gets his big badass moment to shine. Honestly, he gets a lot of moments to shine. He's just a badass all the way throughout. Most definitely my favorite character thus far. That being said, all the characters are really well written. Even the character who you're meant to kind of be annoyed by at first, his name's Rex. He's meant to be just kind of an annoying douchebag kind of guy, and you're not meant to like him, and I never liked those characters anyway. Not like, you're not meant to like them, but I don't like them in the sense that they just annoy me. I want them to get off my screen, those kinds of characters. And at first, this character Rex seems like it, but you know what? They actually made me kind of like him by the end. he got interesting. I mean, I wouldn't watch a spin-off show of him or anything, but I didn't despise seeing him on my TV screen. So props to them, all the characters are really well written. There's a couple I wish I would have seen more of. There's a character named Kate who has this cool superpower to kind of duplicate herself. Her superhero name is actually Duplicate. Yeah, there's lots of puns like that. But she has this really cool ability, and we didn't really get to see that much of her. I assume we'll see more in Season 2. Same goes for a couple characters of that kind of superhero group, which I guess just saying the name of them is a bit of a spoiler. There's a couple of them I really want to see more of. That being said, if we're talking about the characters, probably the best well-written one, Izami, man. He's probably the reason you're gonna watch this show. At this point, you've no doubt seen him everywhere, on your social media, in commercials. He's everywhere. He's a super cool character. I can't say anything about him because his entire character is basically a walking spoiler, but he's badass. Go watch the show for him. I did, and I didn't regret it. Also, he's voiced by J.K. Simmons, so you know it's automatically good. As for the main character, Mark Grayson, he's cool. At first, again, he kind of seems like the personality of Spider-Man and the powers of Superman. And he kind of stays that way a little while. And that doesn't necessarily change by the end, but he does get more unique, and it's more the relationships he has around him that makes his character unique. He plays a really good protagonist. He's voiced by Steven Yeun, who's an actor I love. He's just a great, well-written character all the way throughout. There's several twists with his character. Again, it's really hard not to talk spoilers about this show, but he was a well-written character all the way throughout. I really enjoyed it, and I really look forward to Season 2 of Invincible, which, as of currently, is supposed to come out next year. I really hope so. And they better make it more episodes this time, because that might be my biggest complaint of the show, is it's very short. It's only like 8, I think, 40-minute episodes. It's very short. You can get through it in a good afternoon. It is definitely worth mentioning the show is extremely bloody and gory. If you're watching this review already, you've probably already heard that up to this point, but the show is not just a standard superhero kids show. And in fact, I wouldn't show this show to any children. It is extremely violent, it is extremely gory, it's extremely adult. It's animated, but that's just because if they made this a live action, it would make people throw up in its violence and gore. I've heard people compare it to Mortal Kombat, and honestly, I think the gore is worse than Mortal Kombat, especially by that final episode. The people who've seen the show will understand when I mention the train scene. You'll just have to watch the show and find out what that means if you don't know what I'm talking about. But regardless, if you're sick of superhero shows and content like I honestly kind of am, and you've already watched both seasons of The Boys and you need a new show that kind of makes fun of superheroes a bit, Invincible's perfect for you. Again, it'll seem a little generic at first, it'll seem like a knockoff at first. Finish the first episode, trust me, it'll be worth it. You'll see what everyone's talking about. I was in that same boat. I was thinking this show's generic, it's boring. Why am I watching this? I could just go watch one of the million Spider-Man movies or TV shows. Finish the first episode. In fact, just finish the whole season, because trust me, you're gonna like it. Now, a big comparison, like I did just a couple seconds ago, is this show and The Boys. Now, I already made a review and a spoiler review of Season 1 of The Boys. If you want to go watch that, you definitely should. And both shows are getting compared a ton because, for one, they're both Amazon Prime shows, and two, they're both super adult superhero shows, which actually make fun of superheroes a ton. They're sort of a different kind of take on superheroes and what it might actually more so be like. As for which one I prefer, I would probably have to say The Boys, although that show does have a leg up because there's 2 seasons of The Boys, both of which are longer than this 1 season of Invincible. After the 2nd season of Invincible comes out, I might be able to give a more definitive opinion, but as of right now, I do still like The Boys more. The Boys is definitely a lot darker of a show. There's honestly some happy endings in this show sometimes. Lots of death and destruction, but there's sometimes a smile or two to be had. The Boys is just a little depressing sometimes, which I do kind of like a little more. Also, it has Carl Urban. If Invincible gets Carl Urban, well, there might be a contest. That being said, if you liked The Boys, you will absolutely love Invincible, and I would probably say vice versa. If you liked Invincible, you'll love The Boys too. And sorry I didn't get to go too in-depth with this video. There's so many spoilers for this show, it's hard to talk about any of the characters. It's a short first season, but there's a lot that happens. If you want a basic synopsis of the show, the main character, Mark Grayson, his dad's Omni-man, who's basically Superman. Mark Grayson gets superpowers, he meets a bunch of cool other superheroes, death and destruction happens. Lots and lots of death and destruction. And that's my review of... And if you want to see the spoiler review of... then that should be coming out tomorrow or sometime this week, and it should hopefully be a little longer than this video because I can actually talk about things that happened in it. For most shows and stuff like The Boys, I'm able to talk about a couple things that happened that aren't really spoilers. In this show, it's kind of hard for me to think of that, because half the fun of this show really is the twists and turns. Avoid all spoilers you can before you watch. Trust me, it'll be worth it. Anyways though, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my review of... I'm sure you're getting sick of that by now. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, bye.